300 experts from 40 countries gathered at the 5th International LafargeHolcim Forum for Sustainable Construction in Detroit, exploring infrastructure space. In workshops, panel discussions, and keynote speeches, we asked participants, how does the whole topic of infrastructure affect the building materials industry?
The current value of the infrastructure assets or stock on Earth is order of magnitude $50 trillion. We need to reinvest. That's what the agencies, UNEP and others tell us. We will need to invest over the next 15 years until the year 2030, $90 trillion in order to bring the dysfunctional infrastructure up to speed or to do what needs to be newly invested. It means that we have to reinvest at least twice what has been invested during all human history.
We've built a huge stock of infrastructure that simply doesn't match the planet's needs. There are constraints and we're not living within them. So we have to change the shape of the infrastructure that supports us. But in my view, it's not actually the technologies that make up that infrastructure which will be the problem. The real problem will be persuading people that they can envisage living differently. And whilst there's a lot of fascination around ICT technology, at the end of the day, it comes down to physical things. So we have to create spaces people can live in, and technology and infrastructure have to support that.
We all know that we're surrounded by infrastructure, but do we make the space do we make the intellectual space, or do we make the economic space, or do we make the political space for our infrastructure to continue to provide positive impact in our life?
I think the link with the real world should be made so that the questions come from them and we can work on answers. The real world being, in this particular case, particularly the construction industry, yes, because they're facing the client's demands, the economy evolution, development, perspectives that seem to be what awaits us tomorrow, and so they have problems to solve or solutions to find.
Even now, sometimes I think that the architect is not enough like a construction company, in the sense that the architect isn't finding details that are multiplied around the world. And in some ways, a construction company is that. They are a kind of global cross-pollinating organization that, that takes a certain kind of glass or a certain kind of concrete detail and repeats it, around the world. That's a kind of design. It's not design of a building, but it's exactly what the kinds of things we're trying to do, find a multiplier.
So I think one thing that companies, industries could look at that we spoke about is really the changing expectations that various diverse publics have of the built environment. It could impact the way that they work.
I think one of the most important elements of the construction industry's role in infrastructure space is that we underestimate the networks and the knowledge of the construction industry. And so many of the designers are talking about what's needed, and if we can have a better quality conversation and partnership, it will be a better outcome.
Collaboration is key. We cannot collaborate enough. And collaboration starts for the willingness to understand the issues before jumping to conclusions, and the willingness to accept everyone in the room to get to a real inclusive, collaborative force that will then deliver better solutions, if only we grasp those issues from a systemic point of view.
The important role of the construction companies comes from the fact that they have an important role to play already in the economic investment front. So they have a role to play not only in being part of this story, but being also constructors of this story. They have to be involved in design, they have to be involved in looking for solutions, alternatives. And the fact that they now embrace more and more sustainability dimensions only helps.
Building has always been for humans. So somehow the complexity of life has to be reflected in the way architects build, but also in the way industry develops itself.
Well, if one wonders what can the construction industry do in the context of understanding the implications of where you build new bridges, new roads, new cities, the first comment I would make is not to be naive. In other words, not to just think of a project as a great opportunity to put in money, to make money, and then move on to something else, but to actually apply a sort of really intelligent learning curve, just as you would in the technology of making materials.
I think that the role of concrete in the building materials field is going to change very rapidly. It's one where the perception has been of something inert and quiet and in the background, and now using new technologies, new intermixes, things that imply roles for concrete that weren't possible. Something that was thin and light versus heavy and solid and thick. Something that might be translucent or even transparent. Something that's manipulable, whereas before it was always fixed and never changing. And I think people are going to see it as a much more dynamic material and something that goes from being plain and everyday to very exciting as a part of the mix.